It is an absolute financial firestorm engulfing Montecito right now, and Meghan Markle is standing in the middle of the inferno with absolutely nowhere to run. The claims that have just surfaced are so explosive, so damaging that even her most loyal defenders are struggling to find the words to spin their way out of this one. We are talking about $100,000 in allegedly questionable spending from the Archewell Foundation. And folks, when you see what this money was supposedly used for, you will understand why the backlash is reaching nuclear proportions. This is not some tabloid rumor or palace whisper campaign. These are financial documents, allegedly revealing a pattern of spending that critics are calling nothing short of outrageous. The timing of this bombshell could not be worse for the Duchess of Sussex. She has been working overtime to rebrand herself as a lifestyle guru, launching her Netflix cooking show, pushing her American Riviera Orchard brand, desperately trying to convince the world that she is more than just a controversial former royal. And now this lands right in her lap like a grenade with the pin pulled. Sources familiar with the situation are already saying this could be the scandal that finally brings down everything she has built. One insider put it bluntly, "This is the kind of thing that destroys reputations permanently, and she knows it." Let us be brutally honest here about what we are dealing with. The Archewell Foundation was supposed to be Harry and Meghan's crown jewel. They're proof that they could do more good outside the palace walls than they ever could within them. They launched it with such fanfare, such righteous proclamations about changing the world and uplifting communities. And now we are learning that a significant chunk of donor money may have gone toward expenses that look an awful lot like personal lifestyle costs wrapped in charitable language. The audacity is absolutely staggering. Royal watchers and charity experts are not staying quiet about this either. They are demanding answers, demanding transparency, demanding to know exactly where every single penny went. One nonprofit analyst described the allegations as deeply troubling and said that if even half of these claims are accurate, it represents a fundamental betrayal of donor trust. Another commentator went further, saying this is exactly the kind of financial behavior that destroys charitable organizations from the inside out, and they are absolutely right to be concerned. But the $100,000 is just the tip of the iceberg, and what investigators allegedly found when they dug deeper is even more troubling. To truly grasp why these revelations are so devastating to Meghan's carefully constructed image, we need to understand the nature of these $100,000 claims. According to reports, the expenses in question are allegedly tied to costs that critics are calling personal lifestyle expenditures disguised as legitimate charity work. We are not talking about money that went to feeding hungry children or building schools in underserved communities. We are talking about expenses that allegedly benefited one person above all others, and you can probably guess who that person is. The scene this paints is absolutely damning when you step back and look at it. Harry and Meghan positioned themselves as the humanitarian power couple of the century. They left the royal family, gave up their titles, and told the world it was because they wanted to focus on their charitable work without the constraints of palace protocol. They sat down with Oprah and presented themselves as victims who just wanted to do good. And now financial documents allegedly show that the foundation they created to prove their noble intentions may have been serving a very different purpose altogether. Sources close to the situation describe the mood inside Sussex circles as one of barely contained panic. One insider revealed that the couple knew this day might come eventually, but they never expected the details to be this specific or this damaging. Another source said there is a lot of finger-pointing happening right now, with staff members who are no longer with the organization suddenly becoming very talkative. Let that sink in for a moment. The people who witnessed what was happening inside Archewell are apparently ready to share what they saw. This is not the first time the Sussexes have faced financial scrutiny since leaving royal life. There were questions about their Spotify deal and why they produced so little content for so much money. There were whispers about their Netflix contract and whether they were actually delivering value. There were concerns raised when Archewell's charitable donations seemed modest compared to their operating expenses. But this, folks, this takes it to an entirely different level. This is not about whether they are lazy or entitled. This is about whether donor money was appropriately used. Charity watchdog organizations are now openly calling for a full accounting of Archewell's finances. One prominent nonprofit oversight group released a statement saying that allegations of this nature require immediate and complete transparency. Another expert in foundation governance told reporters that the board of any charitable organization has a fiduciary duty to ensure funds are used appropriately, and these claims suggest that duty may not have been fulfilled. The walls are closing in, and the questions are only getting louder. To understand why this is so damaging to everything Meghan has tried to build, we need to look at what the money was supposedly spent on. When you see the itemized breakdown of these alleged expenses, you will understand immediately why people across the globe are absolutely outraged. According to reports, the $100,000 in questionable spending allegedly falls into several categories that have critics choking on their morning coffee. We are talking about travel expenses, wardrobe costs, public relations consultants, and something vaguely described as operational costs that sources say benefited Meghan personally far more than any charitable cause. Let us start with the travel allegations, because this is where the outrage really begins to build. Sources claim that luxury travel expenses were billed to the foundation for trips that critics say were more about maintaining a celebrity lifestyle than actual charitable work. We are not talking about economy flights and budget hotels. We are talking about the kind of travel arrangements that would make most donors furious if they knew their contributions were funding first-class seats and five-star accommodations. One source familiar with the expenses said it was always justified as necessary for security or logistics, but the line between foundation business and personal luxury was incredibly blurry. Then there are the wardrobe allegations, and folks, this is where the hypocrisy becomes absolutely unbearable. Meghan has built her entire brand around appearing relatable, around connecting with everyday people who struggle with everyday problems. And yet reports suggest that significant sums were allegedly spent on clothing and styling that was charged to charitable accounts. One fashion industry insider noted that Meghan has worn outfits worth tens of thousands of dollars to foundation events, and now people are asking who actually paid for those designer pieces. The answer, allegedly, is not coming from her personal bank account. Typical charitable foundations operate with overhead costs somewhere between 15 and 25% of their total budget. That means for every dollar donated, at least 75 cents should go directly toward the charitable mission. But critics looking at these Archewell allegations are raising serious questions about whether the foundation's ratio was anywhere close to industry standards. One nonprofit analyst described the alleged spending pattern as wildly inconsistent with best practices for charitable organizations. Another expert went further, saying if these expenses are accurate, it represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what a foundation is supposed to do. The public relations consultant expenses have raised particular eyebrows among those familiar with foundation operations. Sources reveal that significant sums allegedly went toward managing Meghan's personal image rather than promoting charitable causes. Allow me to translate what that actually means in plain English. Money that donors gave thinking it would help people in need may have been spent making Meghan look good in the press. One communications professional who reviewed the allegations said they had never seen anything quite like it, calling the alleged overlap between personal branding and charitable work deeply problematic. But the spending itself is not what is causing the real firestorm right now. It is who allegedly approved these expenses and how they sailed through without meaningful oversight. Sources close to the Archewell Foundation are now revealing something that makes this entire situation exponentially worse. The internal oversight that should have caught these alleged irregularities was essentially non-existent. Multiple insiders describe a structure where Meghan had significant, if not total, control over spending decisions with minimal pushback from anyone who should have been providing checks and balances. One former associate described the approval process as whatever Meghan wants, Meghan gets, and nobody was brave enough to tell her no. The board structure of Archewell has always raised questions among foundation governance experts. Unlike established charitable organizations with large independent boards filled with outside voices and fiduciary watchdogs, Archewell operated with a small, tight-knit leadership circle. Critics have long pointed out that this setup created conditions where accountability could easily fall through the cracks. One nonprofit governance specialist said a foundation board should be asking tough questions and demanding documentation, but when the board is essentially friends and loyalists, that critical oversight disappears. Reports suggest that when financial decisions were made, they were made quickly and with little documentation beyond verbal approvals. One source familiar with internal operations claimed that traditional expense review processes were often bypassed entirely. Another insider revealed that attempts to implement more rigorous financial controls were met with resistance from the top. Let that sink in for a moment. The very safeguards that should have prevented these alleged irregularities were apparently unwelcome inside the Sussex operation. This stands in stark contrast to how established foundations operate. Organizations like the Gates Foundation or the Clinton Foundation, whatever you think of their politics, have extensive governance structures, independent auditors, and multiple layers of approval for significant expenses. They have learned, sometimes through their own scandals, that transparency is not optional when you are asking the public to trust you with their money. Archewell allegedly operated more like a personal checking account with a charitable tax status. The question that investigators and critics are now asking is brutally simple. Who was supposed to be watching the money, and why did they not do their job? Sources say the answer points directly to a culture where questioning the Duchess was simply not done. One former Archewell employee allegedly told associates that raising concerns about spending was career suicide. The message was clear: you are either on the team or you are the enemy, and enemies do not last long. And when former staffers started noticing these patterns and began raising quiet concerns, things allegedly got very uncomfortable very fast. They called it the unspoken rule inside Archewell, and everyone who worked there knew exactly what it meant. Do not question the Duchess. Do not push back on her decisions. Do not even hint that maybe, just maybe, something might not be entirely appropriate. Sources who worked within the Sussex operation are now revealing a workplace culture where financial concerns were dismissed, minimized, or met with swift consequences for those who dared to raise them. One former employee allegedly described the environment as walking on eggshells covered in broken glass. Anything related to Meghan's spending or decisions was simply off limits for discussion. Another insider claimed that staff members who asked too many questions about expense reports or budget allocations found themselves suddenly frozen out of meetings, removed from projects, or facing termination for vague performance issues. The message was received loud and clear. Loyalty meant silence, and silence meant survival. This connects directly to the broader Duchess difficult narrative that has followed Meghan since her days inside Kensington Palace. Remember, this is the same woman whose staff turnover rate became legendary in royal circles. This is the same woman whose former employees allegedly compared their experience to working in a toxic pressure cooker. This is the same woman who reportedly drove multiple assistants to tears and sent emails at 5 in the morning expecting immediate responses. The pattern of behavior that critics describe is remarkably consistent across multiple organizations and multiple years. Sources say that the workplace culture inside Archewell made internal accountability virtually impossible. One consultant who briefly worked with the foundation revealed that raising concerns about anything was treated as a betrayal of Meghan personally. Questions about spending were reframed as questions about her judgment, her vision, her integrity. And once an employee was perceived as disloyal, their days were numbered. Another insider put it even more bluntly, saying the foundation was not run like a charity. It was run like a cult of personality where one person's wishes were law. The staff turnover at Archewell has been staggering by any industry standard. In just a few years, the foundation has cycled through executives, communications directors, and operational staff at a rate that would raise red flags at any normal organization. Each departure was explained away as a mutual decision or a new opportunity, but sources say the truth was far simpler. People left because they could not stomach what they were seeing, and those who raised concerns were pushed out before they could cause problems. But the backlash was not just brewing internally among uncomfortable staffers. The public was about to explode in a way that even Meghan's expensive crisis management team could not contain. Within hours of these spending claims surfacing in the media, social media transformed into an absolute war zone, the likes of which the Sussexes have rarely seen. The hashtag started trending almost immediately. Archewell exposed, Meghan fraud, Sussex scam. Across every platform, from the Bird app formerly known as Twitter, to Instagram to TikTok, millions of users were sharing their outrage, demanding answers, and calling for accountability in terms that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. The viral commentary has been absolutely blistering. One post that racked up hundreds of thousands of engagements simply asked how much of that money was supposed to help people, and how much helped Meghan's wardrobe, and the responses numbered in the tens of thousands. Another viral thread broke down the alleged expenses line by line, comparing what the money could have done for actual charitable causes versus what it allegedly funded. The math, folks, is not flattering. $100,000 could have provided meals for thousands of families, scholarships for dozens of students, or medical care for countless individuals in need. Royal commentators who have followed the Sussex saga from the beginning are not holding back either. One prominent British journalist called the allegations a complete vindication of everyone who warned that this couple's charitable intentions were more about image than impact. Another commentator described it as the inevitable result of an organization run without transparency or accountability. A third went even further, suggesting that regulatory authorities need to take a very close look at how Archewell has been operating since its inception. But here is where it gets interesting. Meghan's loyal defenders are working overtime to spin this as a coordinated smear campaign orchestrated by palace loyalists, tabloid enemies, and racist trolls. The Sussex Squad, as they call themselves, have flooded social media with counter-narratives claiming the financial documents are fabricated, the sources are lying, and the entire controversy is manufactured to destroy a successful black woman. Some are even claiming this is King Charles himself trying to distract from his own problems by targeting his estranged daughter-in-law. Let us be brutally honest about the state of public opinion right now. Poll after poll shows Meghan's favorability ratings in freefall across multiple countries. In Britain, she consistently ranks as one of the least popular public figures. In America, where she once enjoyed majority support, her numbers have cratered since the Oprah interview failed to deliver lasting sympathy. And now, with financial scandal allegations piling onto an already damaged reputation, sources say her team is genuinely frightened about whether recovery is even possible. Yet the criticism coming from one unexpected corner has hurt Meghan more than all the social media outrage combined. Notice who is not defending her this time. Take a moment and think about all those A-list celebrities who stood beside the Sussexes during their supposed hour of need. Think about all those powerful Hollywood names who championed Harry and Meghan as brave truth-tellers fighting against an oppressive institution. Think about all those public statements of support, all those magazine covers proclaiming their heroism, all those industry insiders who attached their names and reputations to the Sussex brand. Now look around. The silence is absolutely deafening. Sources connected to Hollywood's elite circles reveal that many of Meghan's former celebrity allies are quietly but deliberately distancing themselves from the controversy. Phone calls are going unanswered. Invitations to events are mysteriously getting lost. Public statements of support that would have been automatic even a year ago are nowhere to be found. One entertainment industry insider described the situation as radioactive, saying nobody wants to be associated with potential charity fraud allegations, no matter how much they might privately sympathize with Meghan. This mirrors a pattern we have seen before with the Sussexes and their famous friends. Remember when Spotify dropped their deal and suddenly all those celebrity connections who were supposed to help produce content vanished into thin air? Remember when Netflix reportedly expressed frustration with the lack of deliverables and Hollywood's support for the couple became notably muted? The pattern is unmistakable. When things are good, the Sussexes are surrounded by powerful friends. When things go bad, those friends become remarkably difficult to locate. One entertainment journalist who covers celebrity philanthropy noted something particularly telling. In normal circumstances, when a celebrity faces unfair accusations, their famous friends rush to social media to defend them. They release statements, they appear on talk shows, they make their support visible and vocal. But in this case, the celebrity class has gone completely silent. And in Hollywood, folks, silence is not neutral. Silence is a message. Silence says we are watching, we are calculating, and we are not willing to risk our own reputations on this sinking ship. The implications for Meghan's future ambitions are devastating. Her entire post-royal strategy has been built on leveraging celebrity connections to maintain relevance and generate business opportunities. Without that network of A-list support, without the borrowed credibility of famous friends vouching for her character, she is left to face these allegations essentially alone. One public relations expert described it as the worst possible scenario for someone whose brand is entirely dependent on perception and association. And across the Atlantic Ocean, the royal family's reaction, or rather their calculated lack thereof, is sending its own unmistakable message. Buckingham Palace issued no formal statement regarding the allegations against the Archewell Foundation, and sources say privately, senior royals are experiencing something between vindication and grim satisfaction. One insider close to palace operations revealed that the reaction behind closed doors was essentially, "We tried to warn everyone, but nobody wanted to listen." Another source said there was no surprise whatsoever at the news, only a quiet acknowledgement that patterns observed years ago were finally becoming undeniable to the wider public. For those who have followed the internal royal drama since Meghan first entered the picture, this represents a turning point of sorts. Remember, there were whispers from the very beginning about concerns regarding financial decision-making and appropriate use of resources. There were questions raised about the wedding flowers and whether proper protocols were followed. There were tensions over jewelry, over staff budgets, over expense accounts that insiders felt were being pushed beyond appropriate limits. At the time, these concerns were dismissed as palace jealousy or institutional racism. Now, they look remarkably prescient. The impact on Harry's already devastated family relationships cannot be overstated. Sources say that whatever slim hope existed for meaningful reconciliation has been effectively extinguished by these latest allegations. King Charles, who allegedly still harbors fatherly affection for his younger son despite everything, is reportedly torn between his personal feelings and his duty to protect the monarchy from association with scandal. Prince William, who sources say has not had a genuine conversation with Harry in years, is apparently even more convinced that cutting ties completely was the right decision. One royal correspondent with deep palace connections described the family dynamic as essentially a permanent estrangement that grows worse with each new controversy. Another source noted that every time it seems like things might thaw, every time there appears to be an opening for healing, something happens that reminds the family exactly why they stopped trusting the Sussexes in the first place. This financial scandal allegedly is simply the latest nail in a coffin that has been building for years. The question of future reconciliation now seems almost laughable. Any path back to royal life, even a peripheral one, would require the family to publicly associate themselves with Harry and Meghan. Given these allegations, that association has become even more impossible than it was before. Sources say the palace is operating under the assumption that the Sussex relationship is permanently severed, and they are planning accordingly for a future where Harry and Meghan exist entirely outside the royal orbit. But the biggest threat facing Meghan right now is not public opinion or family rejection. It is what could come next from a legal and regulatory perspective. Charity fraud investigations have destroyed bigger names and bigger fortunes than Meghan Markle possesses. Make no mistake about what is potentially at stake here. If regulatory bodies decide these allegations warrant formal investigation, the Sussexes could find themselves facing consequences that go far beyond bad press and social media criticism. We are talking about potential audits, potential hearings, and in the most extreme scenarios, potential legal liability that could follow them for years. Non-profit oversight bodies in both the United States and the United Kingdom have broad authority to investigate foundations suspected of financial irregularities. Sources familiar with charity law explain that the allegations being reported, if substantiated, would absolutely meet the threshold for regulatory inquiry. One legal expert specializing in nonprofit governance noted that mixing personal expenses with charitable funds is one of the most serious violations a foundation can commit. It strikes at the very heart of the tax-exempt status that allows these organizations to exist. History provides sobering examples of what happens when celebrity foundations face this kind of scrutiny. Remember the Trump Foundation and how those investigations unfolded? Remember the scrutiny that forced significant changes at various entertainment industry charities over the years? The pattern is remarkably consistent. Once investigators start pulling threads, the entire tapestry tends to unravel. And sources say the threads at Archewell may be particularly vulnerable to unraveling under professional examination. The potential impact on Meghan's business ambitions could be catastrophic and permanent. Netflix has already reportedly expressed frustration with the Sussex partnership. Any hint of financial impropriety could give them the excuse they need to renegotiate or terminate their deal entirely. The American Riviera Orchard lifestyle brand, which Meghan has been desperately trying to launch, depends entirely on consumer trust. Who wants to buy jam and home goods from someone facing charity fraud allegations? The business case collapses the moment the brand becomes associated with scandal rather than aspiration. Sources within entertainment industry legal circles say companies are already conducting quiet reviews of their Sussex relationships. One studio executive allegedly told associates that nobody wants to be the one explaining to shareholders why they continued partnering with someone under investigation for misusing charitable funds. The calculations being made in boardrooms right now are not about loyalty or fairness. They are about risk management and liability exposure. And Meghan Markle, according to these sources, has become a risk that many companies are no longer willing to take. So where does this leave the woman who once had the entire world at her feet, who married a prince, and seemed destined for unlimited success? The picture of Meghan Markle's current position is one of remarkable precariousness, a woman balanced on a knife's edge with everything she has built, threatening to collapse beneath her. Brand deals that were supposed to secure her family's financial future are now shaky at best. Public trust, the foundation upon which any celebrity career must rest, has been eroded to the point where recovery seems almost impossible. Legal clouds are gathering on the horizon, and the professionals she hired to protect her reputation are running out of ways to spin these latest revelations. Consider the dramatic arc of this story for just a moment. A woman who walked down the aisle at Windsor Castle, watched by billions around the world. A woman who seemed to have achieved the ultimate fairy tale, a Hollywood actress becoming an actual princess. A woman who commanded magazine covers, sparked fashion trends, and had access to some of the most powerful people on the planet. That woman now sits in a Montecito mansion, watching her reputation crumble while former friends pretend they do not know her phone number. The fall has been spectacular and swift. Sources close to the Sussex operation describe an atmosphere of barely controlled chaos. Legal consultants are being retained. Crisis communication strategies are being revised daily. There are reportedly discussions about whether to address the allegations directly or hope they fade from public attention. But the options are limited, and none of them are good. One insider revealed that the mood is genuinely fearful in a way it has never been before, because this time the allegations involve actual documents rather than anonymous whispers. Is this karma finally catching up with someone who allegedly treated people poorly and manipulated narratives for personal gain? Is this a coordinated takedown orchestrated by powerful enemies determined to destroy her? Or is this simply the inevitable consequence of choices made, corners cut, and safeguards ignored? The answer probably contains elements of all three. But regardless of what brought us to this moment, the reality facing Meghan Markle right now is undeniable. Her carefully crafted image is shattering, and she may not have the tools or the allies to put the pieces back together. The woman who left the royal family claiming she wanted privacy and peace has found neither. Instead, she has found endless scrutiny, mounting controversy, and a public increasingly unwilling to give her the benefit of the doubt. Every new revelation, every new allegation, every new scandal lands on top of the previous ones, building a weight that may finally prove impossible to bear. Do you think Meghan can survive this scandal? Or is this finally the end of her carefully crafted image? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.